I'm finally back with it. So without further ado, we should just get right into it. I'll start by paraphrasing something very interesting Mark Waid said on his interview for the featurette on the first box set of Batman the Animated Series. He said that the best episodes of the series were not just about people hitting each other in the face, but they were also about genuine emotions that everyone and not just kids could relate to. Beware the Grey Ghost more than any other episode I've reviewed personifies this idea. This episode focuses on the guest star and the episode constantly stays at that character level while occasionally switching to an action scene. When Bruce Wayne was a child before his parents were murdered, he watched a show on TV called The Grey Ghost, and Bruce considered the character himself as his hero, which obviously influenced him later on to form a Dark Avenger motif for his persona as Batman. The way the episode begins is very intriguing because we are shown a standard episode of The Grey Ghost, complete in black and white, while we cut back to Gotham City where almost the exact same things are happening. The viewer is also taken in with the imagery because there's little dialogue in the first few minutes of the episode. So a criminal in Gotham City is recreating almost the same exact crimes as in an episode of Beware the Grey Ghost, named after its villain called the Mad Bomber. The problem is that when Bruce was watching this episode as a child, he fell asleep before he could catch the part where the Grey Ghost explains how the Mad Bomber got his explosives past the police. In the present, Bruce and Alfred go around town trying to find a copy of the show, but they are informed by a film seller that the company that owned the show was burned down and the original negatives of the show went up in smoke. Out of options, Bruce looks up at the actor they used to play the Grey Ghost called Simon Trent. This is where the episode begins to get interesting. I know I usually talk about voice acting towards the end of these reviews, but it's really important to talk about Simon Trent being voiced by Adam West. Now, I haven't seen too much of the 60s Batman, though I've seen a few episodes, and I feel like I can enjoy it now in a way that I couldn't when I was 10. I say that because by the time I was 10, I knew that the 60s Batman series was very silly, and I didn't want Batman to be like that. Maybe it's because I've seen Brave and the Bold, but now I'm able to enjoy the absurd humor that the 60s Batman had. I'm explaining this because I want it to be clear who this review is coming from. While I've enjoyed a few episodes in the movie, I can't say I'm a true fan of the 60s Batman series, but I also appreciate that it's part of Batman's history, and despite its silliness, it is still an influence on the formation of Batman as he is now. What I'll say is that I think Adam West is a very good voice actor. I thought he did a good job on the old New Adventures of Batman cartoon from the 70s, and I find his caricature of himself in Family Guy and The Fairly Odd Parents very amusing. The Grey Ghost is paralleled with Batman constantly throughout the episode to show his influence on Bruce Wayne now. I love how that mirrors real life with how Adam West influenced the modern Batman. The Grey Ghost seems to come from a much older tradition of heroes from the serials, while Batman is more of a modern, cutting-edge hero, but they still stand for the same principles and ideals. The same goes for the 60s Batman and the 90s animated series Batman. Just casting Adam West provides a deeper meaning to an episode that already has strong parallels. What really impresses me is that Adam West brings serious dramatic acting chops to his role as Simon Trent. There's such palpable misery in Adam West's voice when we first meet him in the present as a washed-up actor because of how everyone still sees him as the Grey Ghost, despite being a gifted actor who can play other parts. The scene where he destroys a bunch of his Grey Ghost memorabilia just after being rejected from another part is really heavy for a children's cartoon, and the viewer can just feel how low Simon Trent is right now. He's forced to sell all of his memorabilia to a toy store owner just to pay the rent, which is really sad as he tells the one Grey Ghost poster he has left, "You've paid the rent one last time, old friend." At this stage in his life, Simon Trent is feeling as washed up as his career is, and probably is also missing purpose in his life. Simon goes through a character arc that gets him out of this purposeless state. When Batman first goes to him, Simon wants nothing to do with it because he wants to distance himself as much as possible from the Grey Ghost, which has now left him with no direction. Simon has copies of all the Grey Ghost episodes, the titles of them being very fun and reminiscent of many serials from the 40s, and he gives Batman the one he needs to figure out how to stop the Mad Bomber. Batman and Simon have a quick exchange that really sums up Simon's dilemma, and ironically how to fix it. Batman says that he used to admire the Grey Ghost, and with much frustration and bitterness, Simon tells him that he is not the Grey Ghost. Batman responds with, "I see that now." And the next time Simon shows up, he is wearing his Grey Ghost outfit. Now, why is this? Batman has made Simon realize that he can still find purpose and make a difference, but that he will have to do this not by pushing away the Grey Ghost, but by embracing him. After all, there must be some part of him that made him fit into the role of the Grey Ghost, so it makes sense that he tries to be the Grey Ghost again, but this time for real, so he can make a real difference. The final really good signal of Simon Trent's character arc is towards the end, when Batman shows him his room of Grey Ghost collectibles. Not only does he now realize that he can still make a difference as the Grey Ghost, but that his original time as an actor on the show itself had value when Batman tells him that when he was a boy, the Grey Ghost was his hero. Simon tells him, so it wasn't all for nothing. While having Adam West back on Batman seems like a nostalgic blast from the past, Batman himself in this episode is being called back to a much simpler and innocent time before his parents were murdered. An entire scene is dedicated to this thread after Batman gets the Mad Bomber episode from Simon Trent and watches it in his projector in his mansion. The audience sees both young Bruce Wayne in front of the TV and adult Bruce Wayne. Both are feeling the same excitement and wonder as they look at their hero, and anyone that has experienced nostalgia from something like a TV show knows that the way it's presented here is surprisingly realistic. It feels like we are being transported to another time for a brief moment. The fact that Bruce experienced this humanizes him and shows the audience that despite living a lifestyle that is completely different from most of us, he is still relatable. A small thing that works is that as the projector is starting to play the episode, Alfred hands him popcorn. Most people probably wouldn't think twice about this, but I think it subtly shows that Alfred is glad that Bruce is going back to a time where he wasn't the obsessed vigilante that he is right now. I also give the episode points that it adds background to Bruce's past without feeling forced like in the first story arc of Batman the Dark Knight before the New 52. Bruce discovers that the Mad Bomber is getting explosives past police through little toy cars, prompting the appropriate response, "You've gotta be kidding me." And the Grey Ghost saves Batman from being blown up and joins him in stopping the Mad Bomber. There's an important but slightly perplexing turning point when Batman discovers that the fingerprints on the toy cars belong to Simon Trent himself. Batman begins to accuse Simon of being the Mad Bomber because it actually makes some sense as the Mad Bomber followed the show step by step. While this gives the audience genuine suspense as to who the bad guy is for a brief moment on first viewing, this brief exchange feels a bit superfluous on the second view because the very next scene shows us that the real bad guy is the toy store manager that Simon sold his memorabilia to. By the end, the Mad Bomber is apprehended by both Batman and the Grey Ghost, and we now see that this has gotten Simon back in the public view, so he releases the original series on video. Bruce buys a copy of the show, getting it autographed by Simon, and Bruce tells him the same thing he told Simon as Batman, that the Grey Ghost was his hero, letting Simon know that he is in fact Batman. I really like this because Bruce emphasizes how special the Grey Ghost is to him and how much Bruce trusts Simon. The end it also reinforces that Simon has embraced the Grey Ghost again by releasing the series and being in full costume, signing autographs, as well as reinforcing that making this decision has improved his life because of how many of Gotham's citizens show their appreciation of him and the Grey Ghost that had denied him so many roles for years now. I've got virtually no complaints with the story, except for a few nitpicks like how implausible it is that Batman is able to get all of Simon's memorabilia back into his apartment so neatly while he's asleep. Everything is so organized and on the shelves, so it makes me wonder how Batman pulled it off without waking Simon up, unless he's such a great ninja that he can redecorate without making any noise. Anyway, the animation this time around is quite good, but the way things are drawn is noticeably weak in many sections, though there are places where it looks fine, such as when Batman walks up to Simon from a cloud of smoke that is very reminiscent from pulp heroes like The Shadow. The place where the animation is weakest is the scene with the Batmobile, when the Grey Ghost and Batman are trying to escape from the explosive toy cars. There's a place where the car makes a sharp turn and it looks straight out of Looney Tunes, which is contrary to the basic aesthetic of the show. There's another place where the Batmobile is going up a hill and the Batmobile is unrealistically flexible, which Bruce Timm has referred to as the Rubbermobile. Speaking of Bruce Timm, let's move on to the voice acting, but before I do, let me say that the animation is fluid on the whole, but not top-notch. The other guest star this episode besides Adam West is Bruce Timm himself as the Mad Bomber. this being the only time he voiced a character on his own show, I believe. I love how over-the-top his speech about toys is at the end, and when he says that toys burn through his money, it makes me wonder if Bruce Timm speaks from experience the way he delivered that line. I also find it humorous that the Mad Bomber looks so much like him in real life, and as he's taken down by Batman and the Grey Ghost. As I said before, Adam West brings genuine emotion to his role as Simon Trent, and is one of the best casting decisions for a guest star on the series because of how personal the role was for him, as he was looked as the campy Batman for many years and still today in some ways. I also appreciate that the Grey Ghost wasn't brought back because of the way this episode effectively ends his story. Mark Hamill has a short scene as Simon Trent's acting agent, which I bet was exciting for him because he watched the 60s Batman series when he was a kid. As a cohesive piece, Beware the Grey Ghost is one of the best and most memorable episodes of the first box set, and perhaps the entire series. The exploration of character is truly great here and adds depth to Batman at the same time, which is impressive how often this series was able to do that. There are dark moments, but the message this episode presents of making a difference is very optimistic and definitely worth watching. I give Beware the Grey Ghost a 5 out of 5, which I might have opted for a lower score because the animation isn't the best this series has, but the story is good enough to look past it. I'd also like to mention that I love old Bruce Wayne and Batman Beyond putting on the Grey Ghost mask to fight Ink, which is a brilliant callback to this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I'll be back with a review of an episode that unfortunately is not as strong as this one, which is Prophecy of Doom. So I hope you'll see me there, and it's gonna be fun. So, bye!